Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is Ines Grace and Messi. I am Pastor Kekana. I'm Dr. Kekana. Today we'll be unpacking, Children's Act and to be educated and know what Children's Act says so that we understand and we value our rights and responsibilities. And we also value the rights of the kids and their responsibilities. So as you listen in, just share the link, invite others. I'm still waiting for my speaker to come in. He's having a network challenge. As you listen to the music in the background, the Sidibeng Merins and Dikokele, as we enjoy it, and then once the speaker is in the stereo, we'll be able to let him teach us, and then we'll go on. And then later at the end, we will be able to take in your questions if you have all those burning questions. For now, let's listen to music and wait for him to come through. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us. We really appreciate and value your time. I saw you had some network issues there. I'm happy and I'm glad that God has saved us in that regard. So, without any waste of time, we've already encroached into 22 minutes into the time. So, I'm going to pray and then so that we can start, and then I'm going to project your presentation. Therefore, then you teach us, and then we'll ask questions later, so bring those questions coming. Ngicela sithandaze bazalwane, ngicela sibambe namehlo so that we can pray and thank our mighty God. This evening, God, we come again as we congregate, God, to come and lift each other up, empower each other, to educate each other. God, be part of us, be amongst us, God. You have promised in your word that when the two congregate, you're the third one, God. When one is there, you are the second one, God. So please, we ask you, God, to be with us as we teach, to also let our spirit be built in the process. Let our mind be transformed, God. We ask you, we know that everything in you is possible. With you, whatever we ask for, God, manifest, God. We ask in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Um, Thank you very much, sir. So today we are going to be dealing with Children's Act. We saw we saw fit, that even previously, like I alluded, we had some discussion in a radio station where I was invited to be a panelist, and there were certain issues that came through that as well. We felt they need to be dealt with, and one of them is us understanding the Children's Act and responsibilities, our rights and responsibilities, and as well in that regard. So that later on, when we build on this case, we know. So this is more like a class. So I'm gonna let our expert panel to have a presentation to unpack for us, and then from there we will deal with the questions that you have. So if you have any question, please send them through, and then we'll deal with them at the end. Possibly by the time we're done at the end, we might, your questions might be answered as our presenter is busy. So what I'm gonna do, Tapiwa, is that I'm gonna project your presentation. When you just need a next slide, just let me know next slide, and then I'll do as
Okay.
such. Okay. So
All
thank you very
right.
much, sir, and good luck to you. Um, there we go. So you can take us through, and then take your time. The time is yours.
Okay. All right. Thanks a lot, Dr. Kekana. So, um, the part that the way we're going to deal with this. So, good evening, everyone, and welcome. Um, the the purpose that we want to achieve with this is for us to understand the Children's Act, but also understand the issues around children's vulnerability, issues related to responsibilities as parents, children's rights, as well as parental rights as well. So we are not only going to look at children's rights only. So you can go on to the next slide. Yeah. So let me just enlarge this. I can't see. All right. Yeah, that's better. So what we want to do is to preview the children's life around the world and in South Africa in particular, so that we understand children's lives. What kind of life do children live? Because we can't look at a children's act without having a preview of the lives of children around the world and the lives of children in South Africa in particular. And then this presentation is more of interactive, and I would want you to engage with the content that we that I will be presenting here. And then the other part is we would also want to provide examples in terms of the meaning of children's rights, as well as the responsibilities, as well as examples of parental rights and responsibilities. And in a way, we would provide a critique of the Children's Act. Where it did not elaborate, we would tap into research, um, in light of responsibilities, for example. So we'll do that as well. And at the end, what we want to do is harmonize our understanding of children's and parental rights and responsibilities, as well as advance those rights because they are important. Okay. So in general, there's in life what we call populations at risk. So populations at risk refer to groups in society that are most likely to suffer some consequences or they're at risk of discrimination and other forms of ills. And discrimination is an unfair treatment of individuals or groups. So the groups that we call populations at risk um, are more likely to receive unfair treatment. That's discrimination. They are most likely to be prejudged and they might be treated negatively. So, and I want us to, when we make these definitions, think about children and the kind of discrimination that they are likely to experience, the unfair treatment that they are likely to experience as children, which puts them at risk. And then there's also oppression, which is the inhuman or degrading treatment of individuals. So those groups or individuals, members of that group, that is likely to be degraded or receive an inhuman treatment, become called population at risk. And this can include people with disabilities or people with impairments. This can include older people. They can be subjects of discrimination or of oppression. And I would also want to add, oppression also means the limitation of choices. So someone who is oppressed has very little, if any, choices. And an example in our South African context is the Black people during apartheid. They were oppressed, which means they had very little, if any, choices about their lives. So that's what oppression means as well. And most people that belong to a population at risk, they are stereotyped. In other words, people have fixed mental images about children or people with disabilities or older people or other groups, any other group that is oppressed. So those are key terms that we must define. And then they are also stigmatized. In other words, they are categorized. In light of children, you would find that people can have a negative description of children, or you would hear people saying children, they are just in our township language, they would say bust out, abantwana bust out. And it in some of the cases it's not that children are stubborn, but they're just being children. So, but that stigma in itself makes them vulnerable, puts them at risk, because someone would say, yes, this is the characteristic that we should find in children, and because they are like this, we must treat them in this way. And there's also a lot of prejudice. In other words, these are preconceived opinions about members of a specific group or the group as a whole. The same way people would say older people are like children. When people get old, they are like children. So that's a kind of a prejudice, but it does not apply to all older people. The same way I was giving the example of children, that people would say, no, children are stubborn because of their age. And therefore, any child, whatever behavior that they do, they are misbehaving. And we can go to the next one. All right. So, because of the stigma, because of the prejudice, because of the discrimination, what then we see is that children are actually a very vulnerable group. And part of their vulnerability is also an issue of power within our society. So, you are a child, you don't have power. So, your parent has power over you. And that puts children at risk. So, children are most likely to be harmed because of abuse or neglect, because of them being children. So you can see examples there of the reasons why we would say children are at risk. So you can see there that the child who would have been prejudiced, most likely have been prejudiced, is put in a cage because they can't sit on in one position. So the parent would assume, yeah, in order for me to sit the child in one position, I'll make a cage for him or her. The other part there, you can see the child being pulled by the ear, and the prejudice sometimes could be agalaleli, so we have to pinch the ear in order for the child to listen. In the worst cases, you can see the blue eye there, very, very, very saddening. And in the other case, you can see the belt there. The child is being to be eaten, is going to be beaten. The worst case there, you can see it's someone who uses cigarettes to torture the child, because in most cases they are not disciplined. So at the end, you see that a child might not even be safe in their own home, because of such treatment. The funny thing about all this is that most of us as adults, even if we misbehave, no one pinches our ears, but we believe that children then must be pinched, their ears must be pinched. In other cases, you would find, like the examples that you find there, when we misbehave as adults, nobody takes a belt and beats us up. It doesn't happen like that. So you would find it's the prejudice in most cases, the stereotypes that influence most of this. And then the other part also that puts children at risk, by virtue of their age, children are impulsive. So any human being, when they are growing up, and psychologically, if you are still a child, you are bound to be impulsive. Why is it like that? The part of the brain that's responsible to control impulse is called myelin. And the brain has enough myelin when someone reaches 21. That's when the whole process is completed, the process of developing your brain. So for children, to a certain extent, it's acceptable for them to be impulsive because their brain hasn't reached that stage of controlling impulse. But we are expecting them to be controlling impulse at a very young age, when we know that the whole process that prepares yourself to be able to control your impulse is only complete when you reach 21. So those are some of the things that prejudice children. And then again, the emotions as well, and the motives. Children cannot judge motives like intention. They can't. But then parents now have motives to hate the child. So the parent who decides, okay, I'm going to do this to the child, in their intention, their intention is very clear. I'm going to hate this child. And that puts the child at risk of injury as well as neglect. We can move to the next slide, Doc. Right. So I can't see the words. They're a bit smaller. Okay. Let me try to check here. Okay, so in Africa in general, we have 60% of children who live in poverty. Specifically because children cannot work because of their age. So the poverty in itself places them at risk. And the children cannot have income, or even if they have, it's very little. So that again puts children at risk. And then in Africa, we know AIDS, HIV is responsible for 20 million children being orphaned. That again places children at risk. So if their parent has died, or both parents have died, the child is now an orphan. That puts children at risk. And when I share these statistics, I want us to think of children as a whole, not only our children, because our children might have both parents, or they might still be lucky and have one of their surviving parents. But in general, I want us to think about all children, or as many children as we can. Most are actually orphaned because of HIV. And then in South Africa, more than half of the children live below the poverty line. And again, I want us to think broadly and not only consider our own children who might be privileged that they are not living in poverty. And that poverty, again, is what puts children at risk. And then 1/3 of girls experience some form of violence before the age of 18. Again, that's another high risk for children. And then in terms of child mortality, a lot of children actually die at birth or before they reach the age of 5. Very saddening again. That shows us that children are actually at risk. And then you would know most children live in inadequate housing, and the exposure, even if all of us are exposed to harmful substances in the house, or the bad infrastructure in the house, the way it affects children and the way it affects adults is different. An example could be, let's say we use coal in the house. For adults, and coal is still used in South Africa. When you go to our informal settlements, a lot of coal is still used as a source of energy, and the impact that the burning gases from the coal has on children is different. Is a different impact on adults. So these are things that we need to think about, and this is what puts children at risk. And then close to 2 million children are living in informal housing, like I was saying. So we have got a big number of children who are living in those informal housings and shacks in backyards, rooms built of non-durable materials. This has an impact on children's lives in South Africa. And then we know the highest infected age now in South Africa is between 14 to 25. The highest infected, HIV infected new infections of HIV is between that age. So children are children are actually at risk in different spaces. I just thought we could run through those statistics, because that kind of gives us a light in terms of understanding children's lives, their lived realities, not specifically your children, but children around the world, children in Africa and children in South Africa. So I want us to have that broad view of children. We can go to the next slide, Doc. All right. Right. So now we come to the Children's Act, which is a topic of contestation in amongst our citizens. So the Children's Act is developed from the issues that we have highlighted, that children are at risk. In other words, they are vulnerable. Their lives are not the same as lives of adults. Theirs are, they've got more risks compared to us as adults. So the Children's Act was specifically developed to preserve and strengthen families. And I want us to be very clear about this. The Children's Act was not about destroying families. Very clear. It's about preserving and strengthening families. That's one of the objectives. Then it is also supposed to give effect to the rights of children. And then it is also meant to ensure that the best interests of the children are maintained. Then make provisions for structured services, which might not be as important for this discussion. And the Children's Act is also meant to strengthen and develop community structures which can assist in providing care and protection for the children. So the Act, the objectives of the Act are very clear. They are very positive. I'm not sure where people get it when they think that the Children's Act is meant to destroy families, is meant to push down parental rights. It's actually well-meaning. I think it's a matter of interpretation. We can get to the next slide. Okay, so here are the children's rights. And I want us to think about this and say, is any of this right taking anything away from the parents? So the right is children have rights to family care. Is there anything wrong with a child having a right to be cared for by their family, by their parent? And in cases where the parents are not able to do that, the state provides that care, which we call alternative care. I don't see anything wrong with that right. Children have rights to a safe and enabling environment. And a safe environment is a community which loves its children, which cares for its children, which does not do any harm to its children, which actually wants their children to be safe. Is there anything fighting against the parents? No. All of us, we want our children to live in a safe and enabling environment. And the Children's Act makes that provision. Then the other right for children is access to social services and health care. So our children have a right to go to a clinic, get the best health care that they must get. Fair. Again, remember we said children can get sick because of the circumstances or the environment that they live in, and therefore it's common sense that they must have right to access to health, and then they must be treated with dignity and self-worth and be treated fairly. Is treating children fairly, treating children with dignity, treating children with self-worth, is it taking anything away from the parents' rights? I don't think so. This is fair. A fair call. Who wouldn't want their children to be treated with dignity at the school where they go to, at the creche where they attend, at the church where they attend? They should be treated with dignity. Then in all these cases, wherever there is contestation, the children's best interest is always of paramount importance. And then children have right not to be subject to social, cultural, religious practices detrimental to their well-being. Very important, and I want to just give some examples in this case. So if children are subjected to practices that are detrimental to their well-being, it means, for example, if I'm a child, I'm a girl, I'm 13, and I'm forced into child marriage. For example, there's a practice in South Africa, uktwala. So if as a child, I am forced to go and get married, would we want our children to be married when your 12-year-old girl is forced into marriage? No, you wouldn't. So children have the right not to be subjected to social, cultural, religious practices detrimental to their well-being. And children also have a right to have a name at birth. Very clear. And I'll just summarize the one that you see on the right there. Virginity testing, these issues come up because would we say their virginity must be tested? How is it done? Is it done in a way that keeps the dignity of the child? What is the child's contribution to that? Do they consent to it? And the law is very clear that the child can give consent after counseling. We're not saying they mustn't do such practices, but make sure they are given counseling to understand why this is done culturally, why it's important, and then they can make their decision afterwards. Does it take away anything from the parents' responsibilities or power? No. It still strikes a balance between the child and the parent. The same with circumcision as well. We can get to the next one. Okay, so regardless of the Children's Act being clear about these rights of children, and in the context, in light of the vulnerability that we talked about, it's important for us also to mention the different abuses that children face. So any form of ill treatment deliberately inflicted on a child is abuse. This can mean the examples that you saw on that picture. if you pinch your child, if you put your child in a cage, you ban them because you are punishing them, then that's abuse. If you don't provide for your child, because we remember we said children have the right to receive parental care. If then the children do not get that parental care, then it's neglect. When a parent fails to exercise their parental responsibilities to provide for the basic needs of the child, then we would say they are neglecting the child, which is very fair considering that our children or children in general in society, they are a vulnerable group. That's why I said it's very important for us to understand children's lives, the lived realities of children, because that would help us understand the Children's Act. We can't talk about the Children's Act without understanding the lives of children in the world and in South Africa. So children then can face all these types of abuse. The physical, you saw in the pictures. Sexual, there is quite a lot that's happening now. There are some people who believe in molesting children, then they would touch children inappropriately. Who would want their child to be touched inappropriately when they're still a child? No. So these types of abuses are very clearly described in the Children's Act, including pornography. We've had cases in South Africa where certain people would take children and shoot videos of pornography with children from South Africa. And such types of abuses, I wouldn't think that there's a parent who would want their children to be exposed to such. So the Children's Act is very clear about all that. And then emotional and psychological abuse, very common as well. And then child labor. We need to be very clear that even if our children are going to do some work, are they not being abused? Is it not child labor? Are they not being exploited? And this happens in a lot of countries. And then so if you want to check for your children, and again, I want this to be very clear to our parents, check, especially the preschoolers. There are still a lot of preschools who believe that we need to beat children. You see, those examples that we gave at the beginning. So please check your children for bruises, for marks on their body, for black eyes, cigarette burns, fractures every day after preschool. Make sure you check your children. Every day after school, ask them, how was school? What happened? So you can easily see those marks on their body. In some of the cases, emotional as well. You might find your child being aggressive. You might find them withdrawing. It says something about what they're experiencing. They could have been exposed to any of these types of abuses. And then what you would find also, you would find maybe your child failing to thrive. You can see this by a drop in their grades. That can be an effect of abuse. So make sure you check all those things and you sit down with your child to understand what's happening. Maybe they're being bullied, and now it shows in their marks. So you can see all those things. And then we do have certain developmental norms that we expect children to have achieved, what we call developmental milestones. So if you can see that your child has delayed, so there's a delay that is natural. But there are those delays that you can see, there's something wrong here, and it can be because of abuse. In some of the cases, a child who had mastered the pot, for example, might go back and start again, let's say peeing in their pants. Now, that change tells you that most likely, from a psychological point of view, that child has been abused. So when we talk of abuse and people think, no, the Children's Act is like this, the Children's Act is meant to protect the well-being of our children. It is not meant to harm our children. It's actually meant to protect them. We can go to the next talk. Okay, so I want this to be very clear. This is a very important part. So children's rights, we have gone through them. Now there's a mention here of responsibilities, and most people miss this in the Children's Act. So the Children's Act says every child has responsibilities. every child has responsibilities appropriate to the child's age. And these responsibilities are towards his or her family, community, and state. So it is our role as parents, as communities, to make sure that our children assume those responsibilities that are appropriate to their age. If I would criticize the Children's Act, I would say I would do so with grace. So this is a part where the Children's Act does not elaborate. But for the purpose of this presentation, I've taken it upon me to define those responsibilities, age appropriate. So the grace part is that we cannot say the Children's Act is wrong, because I think it was impossible to include all cultural practices. In South Africa, we have so many cultures, so many ethnic groups, and we wouldn't know which responsibilities would fit in a particular setting, and we live in different setups as well. So I think this part was left for us to say, okay, which responsibility is appropriate for a 2-year-old? Which responsibility is appropriate for a 5-year-old, a 16-year-old, you see. So we can go to the next slide, Doc. Right. So it's very important for us to say responsibilities do not start. Parents make a mistake. Responsibilities do not start when the child is now 10 years old. It's too late. So responsibilities, if you see, they start at the age of 2. That's when we should start. The other reason why we struggle to give responsibilities to a 10-year-old is that for the past 10 years, they've never learned to assume any responsibilities. So I've given examples there, and I hope Doc can share with everyone the slides. I don't have a problem with that, so that they can at least go through age-appropriate responsibilities to know which responsibilities can I give to my 2-year-old. So some of the responsibilities that you find for a toddler, they can complete simple tasks. And some of these simple tasks could be putting their toys away. So you've played with your toys, you are done. Put them together and pack them. Children can do that. At 2, you tell them, put your toys in the bag. They can do that. And you are teaching them responsibility. A simple thing could be, say, can you put the dog's food in the bowl? They can do that at 2 and 3. Or dusting or wiping baseboards. They can do that. Or piling up books. They can do that. You are teaching them responsibility at an early age. So these are things that we must be serious about and start to do, and teach our children to start doing that, because we are teaching them responsibilities. And I think that's where most of us as parents, we miss it, because we are saying we are going to wait until they are 10 or until they are 5, until they are 15. And it's going to be difficult, because that child has never known that I've got responsibilities to take. And then parents now want to use the stick to force responsibility. You are most likely not to win, because you have not inculcated it in the system of the child and their routines to know that I've got responsibilities. Then for preschoolers, they are a bit older. At 4 to 5, they can water the flowers, they can clear the table, they can pull weeds, they can sort laundry into white and different colors before wash. They can match socks together. And at 4 to 5, I'll tell you from experience, most children want to do chores. They want to do it at age 4 to 5, because what they see is what they want to do. So at that age, definitely you can do that. You're teaching them responsibilities. We can go to the next slide, Doc. And then at age 6 to 9, they are even older. they can do quite a lot now. You go out to buy groceries, they don't just go straight into their bedroom. You tell them to take the groceries and put them in the pantry, for example. They can do those responsibilities. They can sweep the floors at age 6 to 9. They can empty the dishwasher. They can help you prepare supper. It's all this. You see, so if they are used to it at 12, at 13, and you say, can you prepare supper? It's so easy because you've been doing it with them. But if you thought I would start it I would start giving them responsibilities when they are 15, you will never win, because at the beginning you didn't do it appropriately. And then I'm just picking a few because of our time. Around 10 to 13, they're even older. They can wash the dishes. They can wash the family car. They can use the cloth washer. They can do it now. They can even take the trash to the bins. There's quite a lot of responsibilities that they can do. Even babysitting siblings with parents at home. We don't say they should babysit alone. You are there and you can say, can you just watch your baby brother in your presence, of course? Because if it is done out of your presence, then it's a crime. If anything happens, you can actually be arrested for that. So those are some of the responsibilities that between age 10 to 13 they can assume. We can go to the next doc. Okay, and then after 14, they can do a lot. Remember, this has been by this time, this has been in their system. They can mow the lawn, they can care for pets, they can iron clothes. At that age, you are preparing them for adulthood, such that when they are independent, they can do these things on their own. So in general, what implication does this have on children? It helps them developing a caring attitude. So sometimes you'd struggle with your children having a very carefree attitude, not caring at all. It's because they never cared for a pet. They never cared for anyone in the family. And now you are expecting them to care for anyone. They won't be able to do that. And you see, giving children their own must-do cause is actually, it helps them to learn self-discipline. And it also builds their confidence that I can actually do this on my own. And it also teaches children to plan their own time. They would know I must do this and do this. They are planning their own time, which is these are very important soft skills in the long run when they are adults. They need to have these skills. They also know that there are consequences. If I don't do this, this is what happens to me. And then they also get a feeling of satisfaction that I did this and I'm good at this. Okay, we can go to the next doc. Okay, so let me just see, for the sake of our time, doc. All right, yeah, we are almost done, right?
Yeah, I think
okay,
it's projecting. Can you see it?
Yes, I can see. We are on slide number
13.
13. Okay, let's just do it so we can quickly finish. Okay, so when dealing with children, these are the principles that we encourage parents to use. So the best interest of the child is paramount everywhere, in all matters, in concerning the care of your child, their protection, their well-being. What is the interest of the child there? And then their rights, you must make sure you also maintain those rights that we talked about. And then our approach must be conducive to problem solving than being confrontational. So let's have let's use that principle to say, when I'm approaching this child, the purpose is to solve the problem. It's not to kind of interrogate them. It's not to punish them. It's for you to say, okay, what is the problem here? How do we solve it? That's one principle. And then we also need to avoid unnecessary delays, because sometimes if we delay in our actions or decisions, the children's life might be at risk, and they might end up. Remember, their life is already at risk. So if we delay our actions and our decisions, it might even put the child's life at further risk, even the risk of death. And then every child of uh, um, any age must be able to actively participate in matters concerning them. So let's not make decisions for children without them. Let's make decisions with them. That that makes them feel okay. I'm part of this, and I can. It is for them to collaborate when it happens like that. And then it's also very important for us to consider the nature of the relationship between the child, their parents, siblings, and caregivers. So in every decision that we are going to make, let's consider those relationships. And then attitudes of parents, very important. When any decision is made about children, the attitudes of the parents must be put into consideration. Negative or positive, it must be put into consideration. Then, if ever there are going to be circumstances that are going to change for the child, we need to consider the effect of those changes on the child. And then make sure that we plan for the child to be in contact with their parents as often as possible. And then if ever we are going to make a decision about the child leaving their parents, it should be the last resort, because children need their parents in every circumstance. That's what the Children's Act is clear about. Then we can go to the next one. Okay, so when we talk about parental responsibilities, I thought we could wrap this up by looking at your responsibilities as a parent and the responsibilities that are not yours, that are the responsibilities of the child. Because I think that was one of the confusion with most parents. They sometimes want to give responsibility to children, a responsibility which is theirs as parents. Yeah. Most parents do that. And sometimes parents want to take the responsibility of the child to make it theirs. I don't know if I'm making sense there. So I want us to understand that there are certain responsibilities that are not yours, and there are certain responsibilities that are yours. So that at the end, we don't run away from responsibility and using the Children's Act as our excuse to say, no, our rights were taken, our responsibilities were taken as parents. Okay, we can just go to the next slide. Okay, so as a parent, you are not responsible for the following. You are not responsible for making sure that your kids are always happy. So most parents would say, so you are responsible for their happiness, but not always responsible for their happiness. In other words, it's okay for your kid, when you are parenting responsibility, for them to be furious at you at some point. That daddy or mom made a very tough decision for me, and I don't really like this decision. But it's a decision that you must make, because it's your responsibility to make sure that rules are followed in the house. So they are going to be furious at some point. It's normal. It's part of you teaching them, you see. So so when you set limits and then give them consequences, they may not like it. And it's okay for them not to like it. So don't ever think that it's my responsibility to always make my child happy. It's not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to be a parent. And there's no way in the Children's Act where they said your responsibility to provide parental care and guidance means that you must always make your child happy. You can make those decisions because you know these are decisions that are meant for my child. And then you do not need always to get approval of others. And most parents struggle with this, because other parents, your friends, will be telling you, Other adults in your life will be telling, no, you are doing it the wrong way, or this is the right thing to do. You see,
Mm.
know what you are doing, why you are doing it. You don't need the approval of others. As long as you are very much aware, you are looking at all those principles that we talked about, you are giving age appropriate responsibilities. It's not about what the others are saying. So it's not your responsibility to get the approval of others. It's also not your responsibility to control your children. And when I say this, you are not a puppet to your child. It's not like everything that your child must do is based on you. Remember, most of the decisions that your children are going to make, you're not going to be there. When their friends give them a cigarette to try it, you are not going to be there. When they give them a drug, crystal meth to say, try this, you are not going to be there. So make sure you empower them to make the right decisions. And then you're okay. You see, so thinking that I'm the controlling parent, they do what I want, you are not helping the child. You must help the child make the right decision for themselves, because the day they are going to make the decision, you are not going to be there. Then they must also get used to it, that, oh, okay, I must be able to make my own decision here. Mom says or dad says we must be home by 6, and I make sure by 6 I'm there. They must make that decision by themselves. And when they make that decision to be back home by 6, you are not there. You see? So controlling them, it's a futile attempt. You try and try, but never think you will succeed. So we can't control our kids, but we can influence them by the limits we set and the consequences that we give. That's the only way we can control them. We can influence their decisions, but controlling them, forget. Then you cannot do for your children what they are capable to do by themselves. Very clear. So if your child at age, based on the age appropriate responsibilities, a child who can polish their own shoes, maybe between 6 and 9, they must do it. It's not you who must polish their shoes. A child who can pack their own lunch or breakfast, they must pack it. You can't be packing for them.
Mm-hmm.
And that way you are teaching them responsibility. Very clear. And then I'm just going to be quick. Then you don't have to be a Superman or Wonder Woman. You are a human being, you see? So focus on addressing every behavioral issue that you have picked up. And it's okay for you to make mistakes as a parent, but review those mistakes, correct them, and improve in your parenting every day. Every day, we are learning to be better parents. We can go to the last slide, I think, Doc. Okay, quickly, what you are responsible for. Very important for us to know this. You are responsible for making tough decisions. As a parent, you're responsible to make tough decisions. And if your child does not get angry at least once in a while, you are not doing your job. You see, children will test your boundaries, and they would see, oh yeah, I can it. And in some cases, you don't need a lengthy explanation. This is the way it is because of this and this and this. Full stop. Think about it, and then if you want us to discuss, you can come. Very clear. We need to know about that. And then teach your child to function independently. Very important. That's why we're talking about age-appropriate responsibilities. In this case, as a parent, you assume the role of a coach or a trainer. You are very clear here. You are teaching your child skills that would help them so that they can become more and more independent. They know, I can do this by myself, even without my parent. That's where you would see children who are independent. They would actually be able to do a lot of things on their own because their parents have taught them. They've trained them, they've mentored them, they've coached them. So that's one extra role that we must consider as parents, to be mentors, to be trainers of our own children. And then it's your role, it's your responsibility to hold your child accountable for their actions. So their behaviors, their actions, it's your responsibility to hold them accountable. So if you arrive home after the cut of time, we hold you accountable. You see? And sometimes and setting limits for your children. And I say this sometimes to people that, you see, the child, the adult that you find at work who does not want to be held accountable at work, they were not held accountable when they're children. So what we will be struggling with is failures or things that were not done to this person when they were a child. Now when they are an adult, we struggle with them. They don't want to take any responsibility for anything when they're adults, because they were not taught when they were children. And then it's also your responsibility to go along for the ride. So parents also need to know that parenting is a bit of a roller coaster. Sometimes sometimes there are days where your child is doing well, and then there are also times when they are struggling. It's still okay. Your role is to be with them throughout those ups and downs. That's the way parenting is. And don't blame yourself sometimes when things happen that were beyond your control. Make sure as long as you have given your best, there are things that are going to happen which are beyond your control. And then the best for me is do your best. Always make an effort. Do your best. Parenting is a perpetual balancing act. You are always going to be finding a balance. Just continue to do your best. And sometimes finding that balance might be difficult, or giving consequences that are not too harsh, but that are not too soft. You're trying to balance it here. The consequences, not too harsh, not too soft, but in between. It's a balancing act. Continue to do your best. And finally, probably you can go to the last slide. Right. So my parting word is that by loving them or children, by loving children for more than their abilities, we show our children that they are much more than the sum of their accomplishments. Very important. We can't be loving our children because of their abilities. We should love them because they are our children. Even if I'm not good at school, love me as my parent. Just love me for who I am as your child. Thanks a lot. We are done. Doc, you are on mute.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm working with this team. I think my team is sleeping. But
Okay.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you for what you gave us, and for really unpicking it. It's clearer now. It's much clearer. But there's some burning questions that I want us to deal with right away. I like the fact that if we fail as parents to give our kids age appropriate responsibilities, there'll be somebody else's headache when they're waking because they wouldn't accept the consequences of their action. I believe that the journey to healing or correcting something that went wrong is to accept the reality of your actions as honest as possible so that you can change it, so that next time you can decide better. But if you want to blame other people for decision you've made, you will realize when you are 50 that you've been making the same mistake but not taking responsibility. That's why you've never graduated from that class. So the same thing happens when the children make mistakes or you make a mistake as a parent. Come back again. And what I like is the fact that you said the decision you made, the other parents don't necessarily have to agree with you. And sometimes when our children are doing bad or struggling with something, we take what I call in my own world a double hit. The first hit is that you are hurt that your parent, your child is not doing so well, maybe at school or maybe somewhere, but they're struggling with something. The second hit is that you blame yourself that they're struggling. Certainly, in that equation, it might be difficult for you to be the solution for your child, because there you are sitting with your head between your legs because you are thinking, damn, I've made a mistake here. I'm a bad parent. On the other hand, your child needs you. So it's very important sometimes not to blame ourselves for whatever that is happening with our children. So now I want us to come to the questions that were asked. They're quite packed questions, and I see Fina has already attempted to answer. There is DP Matimana. Sorry if I'm not calling it right. Um, I don't know if he or she asking this question, and it's quite loaded. So I'm gonna try and read it. Would you not say that the children get exposed to abuse due to the environment that they grow up in? One question. On many occasions, the parents fail to treat each other in the considerable manner. And if we are being realistic, children get affected by malicious behavior parents display. I honestly believe male parents are doing a bad job in raising a healthy nation due to the treatment they give their wives, mothers of their children, and then how do you think that abuse can be eliminated if the head of the house does not apply any principle of leadership, care, love, in the family? That's a complete question. Another question that she's asking is quite loaded. So, but I think let's deal with this. Let me let you deal with that first, because she's asking so many things, but she's also making an errors in a certain state. But over to you. What do you say about this? Would you say that the children get exposed to abuse due to the environment that they grew up in, which is, we are in South Africa, we are reporting that so many things. But over to you, Tapu.
Okay, so some of the questions that appear to be questions are actually answers. So
Amen.
environment, definitely. Children get exposed partly because of the environment that they grew up in.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I've dealt with cases of children that were like one child who was traumatized, a young girl of 12 who was almost kidnapped. And so a car just was passing by and then just stopped trying to grab her into the car. So the environment definitely, including the family environment, the toxic family environments where the parents are fighting. It might be verbal abuse, it might be physical abuse, financial abuses, all that you see. To even make the case more stronger for this
Yeah.
person, children don't watch violence, they experience it.
Yeah.
So if children hear you shouting at each other or fighting, they don't only hear it, they experience it. I don't know if I'm making it very clear. The impact
It's quite
is like
clear.
they've been beaten,
Yeah.
they've been shouted at. You see, so I agree with her. Parents, the way we treat each other, it has a lasting impact on the child. And most of our children go through this trauma. It's actually traumatic to hear people, adults shouting at each other. So I
Yeah.
definitely agree with you. Then where the person says most male parents are not doing good. They actually say male parents are not doing good. I would rephrase it and say most male parents, because there are a few who are doing well, but the majority are not coming on board. And I would also use my experience with the cases that we deal with day by day. Most male parents are not coming on board, and you would see this by the statistics. Like the other time, I explained that we have 62% of children who don't live with their fathers, and most of the fathers, they choose not to be in the lives of their children. Then elimination of abuse. We've got to make our homes safer, make our communities safer, make our homes more caring for children. It's things that we can do. When we are going to the parks, are those parks child friendly? Do they allow children to be children? And even in our homes, we can't be expecting children to master all the things that we have mastered and we are 40 years old. That's not fair. Allow children to be children. They will make mistakes. They will break the cup. They will, even their motor skills, the ability to hold things together, they are still developing that. It goes to that, to those little details. I'm a child, I don't know how to hold a cup properly. And I'm going to learn over the years, I'm going to learn how to hold this cup. I'm still a child. Allow the children to be children. And then you shout at him or her, a 5-year-old has broken your plate. It becomes an issue. You pull out the belt and you are beating up that child for what?
Yeah. Thank you. I think we're gonna wrap up this question and then we'll move to the second one. What I just want to maybe add is that how do we then do you think how then do you think child abuse can be eliminated if the head of the house does not apply certain principles of leadership, care, love in the family? Okay, that is for me. It depends on what type of a family you have. If for you the father is the leader, so therefore when the father is not around, you automatically assuming there's no leader, yes, you will have such a problem. And I would run away from saying labeling all men as doing a bad job. That can never be right. Because then we will only focus on men being the ones who are causing damage. Even when the ladies are causing damage, no one is going to be able to pick up or to report it because we are focused on the fact that it's men who are causing a problem. Sometimes, just to allude, sometimes it is the disagreement between the two parents that are damaging the kids, not necessarily what a man does. It's how the two of you are interacting or relating in front of the child that messes up the child. Obviously, we can't say men are the ones that should be doing something, and then the other one shouldn't be doing something. I'm sorry about that. I think that's the catch about this whole thing. Sorry about that. We can't be saying no. Men must agree with this so that they don't cause damage and everything. I would run away from because possibly as a lady you will give birth to a son who's going to become a man, and already if you take that brush, it's going to also paint your brother, your child, and everything. But that's where I'm going to leave it. And the next question is in a situation, but which we just answered, in a situation where both parents are not in a good standing due to the relationship, how do we suggest that the discussion about the children can be heard? So how must this process? Because I know you have dealt with that many a times. So go ahead, sir.
Yeah. So we encourage parents to go for mediation, where you go and talk to a professional. So you are not in good standing, and this is a reality that sometimes when we separate or when the relationship does not go well, emotions are very high. We are angry at each other, and sometimes we are not even in talking terms. But remember, your parental responsibility does not end because you guys are not in agreement. The parental responsibility will always be there, whether you are in conflict or not. So it's very important, if you are not in agreement or you are not in talking terms, go find a social worker, they sit down with you, you discuss with someone who is impartial, someone who does not take sides, and both of you can assume responsibility. And I always encourage most parents, please seek professional help, and you would see your relationship improving, because now it's clear that your meeting point is caring for this child, parenting this child, nothing else. When the ground rules are clear, everyone can easily assume their responsibility. And in some cases, you've got to go to court if the person is not taking responsibility. Or if the person is denying you your rights, you can always go to court for maintenance. You can always go to court as a man for custodian or for visitation rights if you are being denied, or for visitation rights if you are being denied as a woman or as the mother of the child. Either way, the law is impartial and those provisions are there.
Thank you. So you can get a professional help. You can go to the court if any of your rights are not agreed to or not given to you. So either way, there's to be a mediation if the two of you are not, so that it doesn't damage the child, because the squabbles that people have in front of kids are disturbing. Let's see what Fina is saying. In I think in trying to respond to what DP said earlier. So it says the question you ask is loaded. One, I agree with you about the environment. The environment includes the discipline in the home, the communication in the home, the relationship in the home. If these are not managed well, they do affect the child. Two, I believe it is the responsibility of the parent, mother or father, to assess the toxicity of the environment, or some of the best ways is to remove the kids from a toxic environment. But most people stay in such as they say they are doing it for the children. I want to read that. They're doing it for the children. Three, it is said that most cases parents point fingers at each other. Mother says it is the father who is at fault. The father says it is the mother. But what is in the best interest of the children, the child? That's a question. Have have both assessed that, or that both are just thinking about themselves, not prioritizing the well-being of the child? Four, child, child abuse takes many forms: emotional, financial, physical, which any parent can be guilty of it if they don't do it right, which is right. It's not about what you see, which is right. Thank you for that. Abuse can be in either way. I mean, I believe if also the father is denying the mother to see the child, or the mother to make decisions on the child, or to give a child certain responsibilities, it's also an abuse. If you don't allow the mother to discipline the child because you say you are the leader, it's only you who's the disciplinarian, it's also an abuse, because the child won't be growing because of that. So I agree with that. So, and then it says that the DP says, thank you for your feedback. It said that our nation regresses due to poor leadership. Yeah, I think we have addressed the issue of leadership. It depends. For me, there's certain points that when we were growing up, let me say this, sorry, before we go on. When we were growing up, our fathers were not always around. They were working, and they were coming back after maybe 2 months or so. But the fact that the two of them, between the mother and the father, there's certain things that they agree upon, that they hold dear, and the partner would know how the father would react, or how the father would want the children to be raised. The mother imparts that knowledge to the kids, even her own knowledge to the kids. So therefore, the leader becomes the mother, but also leadering, taking a leadership in terms of what both of the parents would have said. And now leadership is not only about a man being a leader in this case. It's completely different, because different cultures and different different belief denomination, Christianity and whatever, they take this thing quite different. So the leadership, it's something that you need to look at. If you believe in a patriarchal system, yes, we'll say amen. But if not, it's both ways. Fina says, yes, children must be allowed to be children and must be supported to explore in a safe environment, as they still trying to figure out this thing called life. DP said men are damaging and causing harm in most of the time. Okay. You want to add, this thing of men is very close to your heart. I can assume this is a woman, but it's okay. This is It Is Grace and Mercy. Your views will be at either way. But I think she feels strong about a man causing damage. But anyway, yeah. A man would say something completely different, but it's something that we couldn't even conclude on that radio talk that we had. There's like five panelists and a boy who never had a present father, who never had a father was present. But yeah, so we couldn't even agree on that, because certain things that if you ask a man who says the cause of me not being involved is this. So it's pointing fingers and it doesn't get us anywhere. That's why we called you, Tapiwa, to tell us and to educate about our rights, so that we don't now try to hide behind nothing and say, no, I'm not going there because I was denied the rights. No, start stuff, so that as a parent, what are your responsibilities? What is a child act? What does it say? And then where can you go should there be any issues? I think Fina, so that we can now start wrapping up. Dr. Gara, Uh, don't run away, but let's rather thorough conversations like these get to the bottom of the issue that are in lived reality for many people. There are men who want to be present and do right, and they are denied the opportunity and treated badly in some instances. But also there are men who just don't care and are not bothered even chased to try and get them involved. Each case must be treated on its merit. Thank you very much. Yes, I agree with you. That's why I'm saying pointing fingers on work, and I actually didn't say what you said. I hadn't read that. That's right, because some you try to involve them, they run away. Some they try to get involved, they get horrible treatment, and unfortunately, most kids stay with their mothers. So if it doesn't matter, you have to go through her, so to speak. Um, yeah, but I think for me, I'm gonna leave it at that. Etapia, your last parting shots. I can tell you this topic is quite heated up in terms of who and who in terms of children. It's quite bad in South Africa. It's turning
Yeah.
out to be so bad each day.
Yeah, I think the person who was contributing, he or she has a point,
Yeah,
because if we want to be fair, and I think I would agree with Faina there. You
yeah,
see, a normal human being who has been raised to assume responsibility does not need a maintenance order to take care of their child.
yes,
You see, so in my understanding, if you know it's your responsibility to look after this child,
yeah,
you don't need the state to tell you to look after your child.
yes,
And that's why I would say, for me, to a certain extent, most of the men let women down.
yeah,
You see, most women actually don't go to the maintenance court. They end up just caring for the children on their own.
yeah,
When in fact, the father of that child, or the father of those children, does not need the state to force them,
yeah,
be given summons to look after your own child.
yeah,
Then I think it's high time men must just man up, no excuses, look after your child, look after your children. This thing of us having absent fathers, it's not right. People having a child in Durban, a child in Limpopo, and you don't even know what that child is doing. Fathers, men need to assume responsibility. And I've always said, when I have conversations with men, to say to them, don't even tell me that she refused you to see the baby, because you can go to court. Court does not care whether you have paid inshaulo or what. Court will say the father has a right to visit the child, or the child must
yes,
visit the father. Very clear.
yes,
So what most men give are excuses, and I
yes,
can tell you, we find these excuses in a lot of conversations that we have with men. Then I want to
yeah,
touch a bit on the leadership as we wrap up.
yeah,
We also need to be very clear about the different types of families that we have. And
yes,
so if the kind of family that we have is a single female parented family, what we would call a matriarchal family, where the head of the family is a female, it does not mean that female is not capable of leading. It's high time we embrace the diversity of the families, and that woman who is the head of that family assume leadership in that family, a woman is by no means less of a leader than a man. There's nothing
Thank
that
you.
any of us is born with that
Yes,
makes
thank you.
this one a better leader or this one a better leader.
Mm.
All of us, if we invest in becoming leaders in our little spaces, um, we can do very well. So let's embrace that as well. That we are diverse. We have diverse families, and in those families, let's assume our leadership position. And if you would ask me that professionally, which kind of leadership would I recommend based on research? The best leadership is core leadership
Thank
of
you.
both parents, where
Both
both are
parents.
at the top. The top,
Yes.
these ones make decisions together.
Yes.
You cannot play them. You see, children can play and go to the father and say, Papa, I want this, or Mama, I want this, because they know if I go to my father, you will agree. If I go to my mother, you agree. They must see you as a unit. If I would recommend a system that would work is one where these two are co-leaders and they lead together. In some cases, even if you come to me as a father, I'll tell you I need to go and consult your mother first.
Yeah.
You see? Or I need to go and consult your father first. And then we make the decision together. That way we are united first, and our children know we have one source of authority. And that authority comes from our parents. And when they make a decision, they make it together. There's no confusion to the children. They are very clear. This is a bond. This is our leaders in this family, and this is how things work.
Okay. I think yeah, like I said, this is well said, well said. And I want to interact on certain issues, but also deal, this is where we deal with certain issues. I don't want to leave a not well balanced or conversation. I like the fact you're saying, and then she agrees with you. And I told you she feels strong about being wronged by men. They said you have said a mouthful that they should man up. They let us down. Yes, but you see, what we didn't consider, and I agree with you. No man, you don't need a court order to look after your child. You don't need to be forced. You need to be there. You need to be present. But we have to also agree there's a certain percentage of people that wants to be there, but they don't have what the woman approves as enough, not even the child. So I'm there, I'm offering a certain presence or certain level of money, let's say, but she's not happy with that. She's going to take you to court, and there's nothing we can do. And that's why most of the people are there, because they don't have enough, as so they're not taken to court because they don't want to. They're taken to court because what they present is not what she wants. Now she's taken there. There are other people as well who on the flip side of the same thing of them wanting to man up, they are also not being led, which is what you're saying there, that we can't be giving those excuses, and that's true. But sometimes when somebody is trying, sometimes it's when somebody is trying to fight their own personal battle using the child, I can tell you the law in South Africa wouldn't let you to do anything but you'll be someone to come and appear as if you don't want to man up. But there you are manning up, but you manning up is not enough. So we have to also account for those people. But yes, no man should be told to look after the child. I feel every child needs both parents, and both men and women needs to agree that each party is important in the child's upbringing. I think, and if all else fail, I like the fact that you have advised them to find professional help, somebody who can mediate, so that the goal can be aligned. Because we see people bleeding. It's funny sometimes when I go and I see people going for grocery or going to buy clothes for kids. The stuff that you hear there, they're nasty. They're quite nasty. But I'm gonna give you a last word, and then you also pray. Then we close. I think I'm
Okay,
done. Thank
yeah.
you.
So we have got those few cases, Doc, where yes, the father is being denied, or here and there the mother feels the father is not contributing enough. We have got those few cases. We are not denying them. The majority of the cases that go
Yeah.
to maintenance order, that go to maintenance court, are fathers who do not want to assume responsibility. I would even
Thank you.
go to, you know, and this is again based on research. Most of the money that women get, they spend them on their children. Most of the money, when it comes to mothers, most of the money that they research shows us that most of the money that goes into the hand of a woman ends up being spent on their child. But when it comes to the other gender, in most of the cases, and I'm saying most of the cases, not all the cases, it ends up being used to sort out the car. You see?
Yeah. Oh, look at that network. Okay. Tapo is having a bit of a challenge there with this network. I'm just gonna give him a bit of a moment when his system is trying to reboot, so that we can be able to wrap it up. It has been really mouthful, and thank you for contributing to the discussion. Really, the point of this discussion is to have those uncomfortable discussions and to have them with pure honesty, and so that we can get to the bottom of them. Somebody's on the sideline, does not have kids or does not know how to raise their kids, and when we are having such discussions, we all learn something from it, and we move away as better parents or better adults. We also move as having all-rounded view, you know, being adopted by how other people view certain things. And this is how we move forward. We learn, we share the information, we share the experience, and we become better. And I cannot stop. I cannot even express how much I've liked the discussions put, and these are realistic things, and all the comments and the answers and suggestions. We really thank them. I'm gonna allow Tapia to come back in, and then so that yeah, I was actually thanking them. You can still continue wrap up, and then you pray. We come out.
Oh, okay. I think I had lost my my thought track, but I was saying, we have very few cases where um the person who is going to court is because they are not happy with the amount of money that they are given. We have those cases, but they are very few. The majority of the cases, it's someone who is refusing to take responsibility
To take
and
responsibility. Yeah,
be a parent. So when we present these things, we must be making a call to fathers to say, people, even if you can just send the money in an e-wallet, just send it.
yeah.
You see, even if sometimes it might happen that she would say, I don't want anything to do with you because they're angry. Send it in using e-wallet. She'll find, let's see if she will return it. And you have done your part.
Hey,
You see,
you know,
I would even say to us, if we are going to be proactive, that is what we should be doing to
yeah,
show that I'm a good person. I'm ready to look after my child. I don't need a court to make me do that. So
yeah,
these are the conversations that we must face head on, especially with most men who give excuses. Like, no excuses, do your part. Even if the other person is not playing their part, do your part, do your part, do your part, do your part. And then would raise a better generation, a future generation that does not have the trauma that we are experiencing now.
yeah,
Thanks a lot. So we can pray.
yeah, yeah. I think you wanna pray, or must I pray?
Oh, you can pray.
Okay. I'm ready to pray all the time. I'm ready to pray all the time. Each time I pray, I get better. Each time I pray, I get the mercy and the grace. So let's close our eyes and pray. Dear Lord, once more, let's thank you, God, for the opportunity you've granted us. We don't take this for granted, God. We take this as another step moving forward. There are people who wanted to be here today, God. They are not here. They're unable to experience what we're experiencing. We thank you for your grace. We thank you for your light. We thank you for your power. You are Almighty God. Matla lesedi di mo ho wena, Modimo, re a o leboha. We can never forget. We can never stop thinking. We can never praise your name. We lift your name high. You are a mighty God. I call you my superstar. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. A
Amen.
good evening, people. We'll see you till we meet again. I think next week probably I'll be talking to the psychologist, but we'll just confirm because we need that dose every month, a monthly dose of our psychology and the discussion that we have with him. So from myself, Dr. Kekana, I am Pastor Kekana, and till we meet again, we love you. We'll be on Sunday again. We'll be on Sunday. Service between 7 a.m. till 9 a.m. We're doing part 3 of the gift of the Holy Spirit by your very own um, pastor and the team on Sunday. So thank you very much. We thank you and we wish you the best. Tapiwa, we'll call you again. We're not done with you. We'll call you again for other issues that needs to be discussed. We need to still bring out that men's conference where we talk to men about something like that, where we learn from one another, where we coach one another, where we uplift one another, where we empower one another. We still need to do that. From myself and the MK team,
Thanks a lot, Doc.
the beautiful team, thank you, thank you. From myself
Sure.
and the beautiful team, the MK team, good evening, we love you. I am Dr. Kekana, I am Pastor Kekana, I am your host all the time. We'll see you